I have made the best possible free hit team for Game Week 7. Let's have a look. Okay, so let's start with the defense and keeper situation. On a free hit, I've gone with Nick Pope. I feel like what we've seen from Newcastle and Eddie Howe defensively has been sensational so far. And I feel like Eddie Howe's learning from the past Champions League campaign that he had with Newcastle, how they struggled with injuries, how, let's say, their high intensity football won't match. So we saw it against, for example, Bournemouth. After the Champions League game, they set up a lot more defensively resolute in the back three, and I think he could do something similar against Nottingham Forest. Of course, there are a couple injuries that Newcastle have at the back, but I still trust Newcastle enough defensively to keep a clean sheet. They're very, very good. I keep saying it. Eddie Howe, phenomenal manager. Then, I think this is the most obvious pick on a free hit. That has to be Gabriel. Again, West Ham yesterday conceded from, let's say, a set piece. It was a headed goal from Michael Keane for Everton. But we've seen it so far this season. West Ham are absolute shambles at defending corners. Arsenal are the king of set pieces. You want Gabriel. And like I said before in a previous video, if Gabriel walks out of that game with 2 goals, no one is surprised because we know the aerial presence that Gabriel has. Of course, there are other Arsenal options. I don't mind if people want to take a punt on Califury on a free hit. He probably has, let's say, more open play threat. It could work, but I've gone with Gabriel with a safety net. I've also gone with Matty Cash. Aston Villa defensively, I've actually only conceded 6 Premier League goals, which is actually better than the likes of Liverpool and Chelsea, who, let's say, are decent defences. Again, Burnley at home is more of a fixture play. You trust Aston Villa enough, let's say, to be defensively resolute enough to hopefully keep a clean sheet. And I don't think Matty Cash is a bad option. Also, he's technically Aston Villa's top scorer in the Premier League with 1 goal. So you never know, he might get another one. I've also gone with Senesi. I think constructing the defence was probably the hardest part of this team, and the midfield actually, because I didn't really know who to go with, considering the fixtures, considering other players I had. So I just went with DEFCON monster, and that is Senesi. Senesi is right now the only player to have hit DEFCON in all 6 games. So like I say, some players start on 2 points in FPL, but Senesi starts on 4. Fulham, it is a difficult game, but listen, DEFCON, 4 points. That's the safety net. That's the floor with Senesi. Let's get on to the midfield. Also a very, very tricky area. But where, like I said, a lot of people wildcarded in Game Week 6 went with double Arsenal defence. I wanted to go with double Arsenal attack, which is why I've gone with Bukayo Saka. And eventually you're going to see I've gone with Gyökeres as well. Bukayo Saka against West Ham. We know, like I said, West Ham are poor at corners. Bukayo Saka does take some set pieces for Arsenal. Could you see a Saka cross, a Gabriel header? I think the answer to that question is yes. But listen, Saka obviously still, let's say, slowly coming back from injury. We know the level Saka is like capable of. We know he could easily go out against West Ham and get 2 goals or a couple goals and an assist. Like, it won't surprise you, which is why I've gone with Bukayo Saka. And not many people will have him. So if you have Bukayo Saka on a free hit, it could be a great differential. I've also gone with Semenyo. Semenyo against Fulham, this is more, let's say, an ownership player. And I know people love to kill me when I say I don't think Semenyo is like, or if I have any question marks over Semenyo, let's say. I think Fulham could be a very, very difficult game just because we know teams that match, let's say, Bournemouth's physicality levels. Iraola spoke about it after the game. Bournemouth tend to struggle in those sort of games. And we know Marcus Silva is a very, very good manager. We know, let's say, how physical that Fulham side can be, which is why I'm not too sure how high Semenyo's ceiling could be. But the form Semenyo's playing at right now, he's probably the best left winger in the Premier League. Like, it's still a very, very good option. Of course, there are other players that you could potentially have. But again, I feel like for a free hit, funds are a bit of an issue because it is very, very tough to get in every single player you want. But the player, and that is also because I wanted Phil Foden. Phil Foden against Brentford, like I said, he was very, very unlucky not to get a return when Manchester City scored 5 against Burnley last week. But at the same time, we know how high Phil Foden's ceiling can be. Like I said, Phil Foden is probably one of the most explosive midfielders in FPL. He could easily walk out that Brentford game with 2 or 3 goals. Like, that's how high I think his ceiling is. Again, like I said, Phil Foden's also scored a hat-trick against Brentford in the past. He has a very, very good record against him, which is why I've gone with the Manchester City man. Now, I've gone with Morgan Rogers, and I know people are going to hate me, but let me explain. His minutes so far this season have actually been still very, very good. We spoke about it last year, how Morgan Rogers was almost like a 90-minute man. I think there's only 1 game so far in the Premier League where he's got like 81-ish minutes. Other than that, he's still a 90-minute man. last game against Fulham, he actually did finally pick up an attacking return. So I've gone with him. Again, Burnley is a good fixture, and you probably do want, let's say, some sort of Aston Villa coverage. Some people might want Watkins, some people might want both. I've just gone with Morgan Rogers for now. I've also gone with Sarr. Now, Sarr probably don't have the easiest fixture at Everton away, but at the same time, Sarr's underlying numbers are phenomenal. His XG, obviously, he's only played 4 games so far because he's been injured for 2, has been 0.72. That is extremely high. And like I said, it's almost like now he's the main talisman in that Crystal Palace attack, which is why I would want some sort of Crystal Palace plays. Of course, you could go with Mateta, but I think with Sarr, you get the assurance with minutes, especially after Eddie Nketiah came on the other day and scored for Crystal Palace. Could now he be getting some sort of minutes and take it off Mateta? Of course, Mateta is going to start. But could he come off around the 70th minute, 75th minute for Nketiah to come on? I think the answer to that question is yes. That's why I've gone with Sarr. Now, let's have a look at the attack. 2 men that I know are going to be definites in every single person's free hit. And that is going to be Erling Haaland. Listen, Erling Haaland for me is still the best captaincy option this week against Brentford. He's still probably their most informed player in the Premier League. Listen, you'll be silly to go out Erling Haaland. I've also gone with Gyökeres. Of course, let's say some people have had question marks over Gyökeres in terms of how he's, let's say, adjusting to the Premier League. But we know he's almost been, let's say, a flat track bully so far in the Premier League in terms of he scored against Leeds, for example. He hasn't really scored against, let's say, the tougher sides. Arsenal's fixtures so far this season have been also very, very difficult. And a lot of people question how Gyökeres maybe used his body, how his first touch was against, let's say, the physical nature of Newcastle. But I still trust Gyökeres enough to potentially get an attacking return against West Ham and potentially get more than one. Because we know Gyökeres should be on penalties, according to what was said at the start of the season. So if he is, Arsenal against West Ham, it is a brilliant fixture. And like I said before, it almost seems that Arsenal have let's say, Arteta's gone slightly more offensive in the last couple games since obviously Eze played in that number 10 role against Manchester City. And you saw the difference that made to the Arsenal attack. Again, midweek, or let's say on the last weekend, Eze still plays centrally. So that's why I've gone with the Arsenal man in Gyökeres. Very, very nice attack. But before we end this video, make sure you guys like the video, comment your thoughts on this free hit, and subscribe to the channel.